Hey, it's Keith Keller, Melbourne, Australia. And today we're going to have a lot of fun talking about podcasting. I've been cleaning up the office and I found an article from 2006 and it had my MySpace signature in the email. And I'm thinking, wow, things have changed. We're going to talk a lot about all the ways podcasting has changed. It's going to be a great, great show. I've loosely called the show Podcasting for Beginners. If you have any questions that you want to know about, then please put those in the chat. As you know, I do 3 shows a week now, so please come and enjoy those at Where is Keith Today. But the 4 questions we're going to ask in amongst a sort of a history lesson on podcasting, because I've been doing it a bloody long time, is how do you record your podcast? And how do you edit it? And then where do you put it? Where do you upload it to? And then the big one, how do you market it? How do you promote it? So we are using Restream in the audio only format. And I know I'm getting a little bit of bullshit about that, but I am going to pioneer the audio only look. This is what Restream does, and it's glorious. And I think Restream does this the best of all of the available choices, but I'm a bit biased. I love it. So we're going to start the show today with the premise that it is a beginner's sort of look at podcasting. What do you think about podcasting, Zaki? You do it mainly as a solo person, but it's evolved so much since, even in the last few years, hasn't it?
Absolutely. So I enjoy podcasting. There's no need to have makeup on, and you can really speak your thoughts out. I run 3 podcasts. One is an interview style. Well, 2 of them are interview style: Soapmaker's Tale and Scale Up Your Business. Whereas the one that's the solo podcast is my Business Tech Unraveled, where it's kind of me sharing the tech tools that I've discovered for small business owners.
I love this. And how have you noticed, in a techie way, that podcasts have changed just in the time that you've been doing them? Have they evolved already, or have you just sort of started?
I've just sort of started, but I would say I've paid attention to it. I just haven't dove into it as much as I have over the past 3 years. And I just think that the tools are making it so easy for people to get their content out there, from the recording, the editing, the publishing, and the promotion. And now with the advent of AI, it just makes it the barrier to entry is so small and so low, but there's still that whole phenomena of pod fade. You have this great idea, but can you be consistent and have it going on?
Ooh, let's talk about Podfade. This is the thing. Just Google it, and whatever, use whatever AI tool you're now using. If Google is not your go-to resource, Podfade is a phrase that we use when someone says, "You know what? I've got this really cool idea. I'm going to record a podcast on the way home from work every day along the beach. You can't see the beach, but I can, and I'm so inspired. And I'm going to do it every day for a year." Well, good on you. Let's see how long you last. After 10 days, someone says, "Oh, this is hard work. There's traffic and, I couldn't concentrate and I had a terrible day at work and I couldn't be bothered. I might have a rest." All right, have a rest. Let's see how long you take to come back. "Oh, I think I'm over it now." What, you did 7. Okay. Yeah, well, that's common. Podfade. Start with a good idea, just don't keep going. Everyone has had this problem, unless you're very, very, very clever. Have you ever had a podcast, Richard, or do you know people that have a podcast? And how do you do it? And what type of podcast do you like?
The way that I'm doing, like I consider the Rocker brand that I'm doing with Kenyatta as a podcast, right? Because it's pretty much the same format. The way that I'm doing is we decided to choose a kind of a panel series, right? with as a panel series, I usually invite like 6 or 7 people to the panel, already thinking about, um, people who might not come, as you know, right? Because some people just don't come. And then I invite some folks. I usually try to invite people that I don't know, because people that I know, I already engage in different channels, right? Such as Go Brunch or here on LinkedIn in different ways. And I try to reach out to people that I say, hey, this person here sounds like a cool person. I'll invite to the show, right? And then I pick a specific topic, and then I invite the folks, and I try to get a little bit professional. Like, I created a sort of a PDF on Canva, right? It has all the instructions, how you can join, right? Especially because we are doing this in Go Branch, right? And there are many, many instructions with videos and, you know, um, best practices, and it shows like the agenda. It shows how big this show is, right? In not because it's big, but but I have to show the relevance, right, for people to give the importance or to it, right, for them to consider this as an important thing for them to attend. And yeah, and then during the show, we typically record the show, and I'm still not repurposing the content, but I have plans for doing that. But what I do is, after like probably 3 or 4 weeks, I write like a small article and I tag everyone who was in the show, right? And just because it has a sort of a relation with whatever I'm writing with, right? And then I just try to follow up them with this article. And yeah, I think it's a nice strategy. I think, the big thing about it is you want to maximize your time, right? You want to maximize your time. And that's why I try to invite 6, 7 or 7 people, because then we have the chance to meet 6 or 7 people that we never met before. That's my strategy.
I just love this. The reason I fundamentally love Restream and Go Brunch, both, is that they have this idea of a panel. I can have up to 10 people on this call, and we do know there's some people listening, and please jump into the chat and ask any questions or say hello, tell us where you're from in the world. I love the interactivity of this. We can have 10 people on stage. With Go Brunch, you can have up to 600. And my rooms typically have 5 in a panel and 25 in the room. It's a different format. I'll put some pictures up of this in a minute. But, the idea of a panel discussion is, look, I don't know everything. I've been doing this a while, but I don't know everything. And more importantly than knowing everything, I do things in a certain way. I have a PC. I'm an Android guy. I live on my PC sit in a chair on a desk. Some people love doing stuff on their phone. I don't know anything about that. I never do it. So I couldn't comment on that element. So it's great to have a panel discussion about how do we do it. And I think we could start, because I've created a series of slides specifically for this. Why don't we start, Zakia, with this idea of how do you record your podcast? How do you do it? Whether it's a video podcast or an audio, how do you do it, Zakia? I'd love to hear your technique.
So typically I'll record straight to my Rodecaster Pro 2. There's a memory card in there. It has the microphone attached, so the sound is good. But I will say, when I first started, I was recording right into my phone. What was that tool that was brought out by Spotify? I don't even remember it. Anchor. Anchor was the tool.
Anchor.fm.
Yeah. Anchor.fm. So that allowed me to record right on my phone, upload a file. It didn't sound great, but I still got the information out of my head and on to a hosting platform. And so now I have upgraded a bit, just because I do the live streaming and the podcast with that Rodecaster Pro 2. So I'm able to record it directly onto the soundboard. It goes onto a memory card, and then I'm able to use that. If I'm doing an interview, good old Zoom works fine for that.
Yeah. So Zoom .com, actually no, it's zoom.us now, isn't it? Zoom.us is a very, very reasonable idea. There's another one I personally have heard a lot about called riverside.fm. Similar idea, same quality. The thing that's very, very important about how to record is that a lot of these free sites, which sound pretty funky at the time and are very convenient, you outgrow them very quickly because they don't sound very good. But now you've got the Rode Pod Mic and the Rodecaster Pro. You sound great, and you can record directly to that device in HD sound. You might as well do it that way, yeah?
Yeah, for sure.
And what about you, Richard? How do you record what you do? I know that on Go Brunch you can record. How do you record?
I was using Restream, but to be honest, it's not working really well. I think it's not a good combination. I'm shifting to OBS, and it's being a little bit more reliable in my case. And what is really good about OBS that Restream doesn't have is the ability for you to create like a virtual speaker, right? Without the need of using Voicemeeter or Blackhole, right? If you're on a Mac or Windows. And it already has this built-in function. You just have to add as a source, and then it captures the audio from everyone. It's a very, in my opinion, a very powerful feature. And I'm shifting to OBS. We only have done one show with that together with Margaret, but we still are trying different tools. But it seems like OBS in our case is way better than Restream for ours.
The Open Broadcasting System. And I think the URL there is obsproject.com. Have you tried OBS, Zakia? Do you know what we're talking about there? Have you tried that?
Yeah, that was the original one before I went over to Ecamm. So OBS is more of a live streaming tool.
Yeah.
It has the same idea with like the scenes, the same things that we have here. And to me, I just did not enjoy it felt very techy, more techy than it had to be. I'm more of a just show me where the buttons are. And that one seems to be a little more of a heavy lift. So now I use a combination of Restream and Ecamm.
Yeah. Now, let me just recap on this. We've talked about a couple of different sites. I'm going to put these in the show notes. Riverside.fm, very, very good alternative to Zoom. Ecamm works only on a Mac, but is probably the premium product in this market, the Maserati of live streaming sites. And they'd be very pleased to hear me say that. It only works on a Mac, though. And I've got friends of mine that tried it on their Mac and nearly blew it up. Like, it's so hard to use. But that's because we're, technical dumbasses. I made that word up recently. But OBS is a completely free product, works on every site known to mankind if you can work it out, but it's completely free to use. I'll start creating some show notes about this, but why do you love Ecamm, Zakia? It's so good. It looks so good, but you can only use it on a Mac, can't you?
Yeah. I've been with Ecamm since they were in beta, which was back in 2017. And Ken and Glenn, who are the founders of Ecamm, they're twin brothers, and they have cultivated an incredible community, and they listen very closely to the needs of what each person has for their broadcast and the types of broadcast they're creating. The reason I like it is, number one, they are listening. Number two, the community around it on a monthly basis. The founders of the company, very similar to the other S that starts with an S, ends with a D that we don't mention anymore. Very similar to them. They come on every single month with what's new. Every month there's a new beta release. They test it in beta for quite a while before they make it a full release for everyone and get feedback on it. So they have interviews in there. They also have setting up scenes and transitions. If you really want a branded live streaming experience, Ecamm is definitely the Mac daddy of them all.
Yeah. Do you have a Mac, Richard, or are you a PC guy?
I used to have a Mac. Now I have a Windows.
So,
but I've never used.
you've heard of it though?
Yeah. Oh yes, yes. I don't know if I probably have tried to install at some point, but I don't even remember because I was using Mac for many years, more than 10 years, right? Even more. And probably I have tried many apps, including Ecamm, but cannot even
Yeah.
remember.
Well, Ecamm is the premium product in this market, but you have to have a Mac. But you've now got a Windows PC and you use OBS. So tell us about that because this is a good one. OBSproject.com. It's free to use, and if you've got the time to work it out, you can do miracles with it. Tell us how you plan to use it.
Yeah, what happened is that OBS is a kind of an abstraction of everything, right? That's why it's not very friendly because it's not like, click on this button and start something. You have to kind of customize everything. And, for people who want something more custom, is a very good fit. In my case, there are some particular features that I found very useful. The first one is the virtual speaker, right? Virtual speaker, it's very important because it captures the audio from everyone in your computer, like every audio, music or voices, right? That's very powerful. And before, we are trying to achieve that using Voicemeeter on Windows or Black Hole on Mac. But it's I don't know, I wasn't enjoying much like the experience, to be honest. I have Voicemeeter here, I use on my Windows, but sometimes it just stopped working, right? And we don't know exactly why. That's why, the OBS having this feature built in really makes the difference. That's number one. I think number two is like it's an app instead of a browser. And because it's an app, I feel it's a little bit more resilient than, Restream. I don't know why, but in my case with Margaret, Restream was hanging all the time. She's, oh, okay, now the show is over, right? I don't know why it's hanging. Maybe because we are in different tabs, or maybe because it was too overloaded with stuff. And with OBS, I feel it's a little bit more, trustworthy in this sense. These are pretty much, I think, the
Can
two
I
main
just can I just pick up on
reasons
that?
why I started to use
Can I just pick
OBS.
up on that? I'm going to come back to Ecamm in a
Mhm.
minute, but Restream versus OBS. This is a very important point. I use Restream, which is an in the cloud solution, which means it's not on my desktop. And for me, it works okay, but it's a bit laggy and it depends on my internet speed. Are you saying that with OBS, you don't have those problems?
Um, I don't know if it. I don't know if there's any difference with the lags. To be honest, I think the difference is if you are, I'm not using this kind of layout here. I'm sharing a screen from GoBrunch. And what I was noticing is that many times, I don't know why, but Restream was hanging, right? I don't know if because the tab wasn't active or whatever was happening, right? And then, Restream was just hanging and ending the stream. And what happens on LinkedIn, you probably know that, but you can only reconnect with the stream if it's within the first hour after they started of the stream, right? And then if it already has passed, I don't know, 1 hour and a half, you cannot use the same stream link anymore. And then you have to start over with a new link, which is, super frustrating because already people are already connected to it, right? And that's one of the kind of problems that I'm trying to figure out with OBS, which that seems a little bit more stable. However, the main drawback that I see with OBS, that with Restream is way more straightforward, is that you have to connect with LinkedIn using that live page that not everyone is aware of. LinkedIn has a live page, which I can take the name here in a minute, but it's a completely different page where you have to select what kind of service you want to use from LinkedIn to generate like an endpoint, and then you copy like the streaming link, the secret key, and then you have to connect with OBS, right? I have tried with Restream using RMTP instead of directly with LinkedIn, right? Which is, in my opinion, a little bit better. But yeah, these are a few experiences that I could share.
And I mean, I know you tried very hard to make that sound easy, but this stuff can be quite difficult. So we've talked at great length now about how do we record the podcast. Some of us use Ecamm on a Mac, some of us use a Restream, some of us use OBS, and we can use Riverside if we just want the audio, and we can use Zoom. And there's millions of ways to do this. And please contact us if you want more information about that. You can DM me directly, or this will be a replay, and you can make some comments. Please make some comments if you've got that facility. But what I'd really love to talk about in two capacities is how do you edit the podcast, and in a subplot of that is how do you repurpose it. Now you are the queen of repurposing. Okay, tell us how you edit a live stream after you've done it so that it can be sort of reused in other ways.
This is where the transcripts and AI come into play. I do not do any of that manually. So the tool that I mentioned previously was Treble.fm. It will allow me to edit my video or audio like a word processor. And so I load it up there. But see, I'm not worried about normalizing audio and all of those really technical audio things that people do for their podcast. I need it to sound good, add intro and outro music, and get rid of my plethora of ums and ahs that show up when I am just riffing off the top of my head and not going from a script. So I'll use Treble.fm to load that file and do my editing, and then I'm able to export an MP3.
When do you send it to?
I use Hubhopper as my hosting platform. It was a lifetime deal. And then it sends it out to Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple iTunes, and my YouTube channel.
Yeah, okay. So we'll come back to this in a minute with the uploading, because one of the challenges is you've got a really cool podcast and you want to put it on the most amount of places. You can do that manually, of course, but you find a service that has this facility, and then they do it for you. This is good. We'll come back to that. That's part 3. But how do you edit? Richard, do you have someone doing your editing, or do you do it yourself? How do you repurpose this stuff?
Specifically for the Rock Your Brand, the only way that I have been editing is using the LinkedIn tool. Right? There's a very simple tool that you can just crop some parts of it, and then you just reduce like the beginning, you can reduce the end, and then you click on crop or something, or trim, I don't even remember, and then it does for you, right? That's the only thing that I'm doing. In addition to that, because the previous editions I was doing on Restream, I was able to record. One of them I lost a recording because Restream has like a duration, right? And I don't know if after 2 weeks they delete if you don't download.
Yeah, I
and
think it's a
forgot
month.
to
I think it's
download.
30 days.
30 days. Yeah, I lost it, right? But the second one I was able to download. And for this one that I downloaded, to be honest, I haven't repurposed yet, but I have plans for getting, transcription and getting some ideas for my article. I'm not planning to upload as audio podcast yet, but it might. Yeah, I think what Zaki is mentioning is actually a cool idea, right? You can just share as an audio, or you can just repurpose on YouTube. I don't know. I just feel like I need to kind of make it a little bit better before doing that. But I'm pretty sure that I can repurpose the text of it somehow.
Yeah. Can we pick up on this idea of transcripts? I still haven't got my head around how to do this yet. How do you do your transcripts? Let me just take a step back. We're talking now about how to edit your podcast. The fundamental way to do this in a time efficient way is to get a transcript of the session with a timestamp, transcript and timestamp. Try saying that really fast. And then once you've got that, that's the essence. That's like the cookbook. That's the recipe. So 2 questions, okay. Where do you get the transcript? How do you get that? And then what do you do with it after that?
So Treble creates a transcript automatically. And so that's where I get it from. There's also other tools like Happy Scribe Notebook LM will also give you a transcript as well. So, not Notebook LM, I'm sorry. ChatGPT will give you a transcript as well. So, you can use those tools to get the actual transcript.
And what do you drop in the file as an
No,
MP4?
I have a question for you,
Please.
Zakia.
No,
Oh,
you go, mate.
apologies.
Now
Yeah.
this is good. Jump in.
Yeah, my question is, yeah, I'm using a tool, a lifetime view that is called, I think, Transcript Low or Low Transcript, something like that. I got on AppSumo. Now, I saw that Cast Magic is back on AppSumo, which was a very popular deal in the past. What do you think they do different from Treble FM or any of these, or Transcript Low or even ChatGPT, in order to generate a different output in terms of repurpose?
So, two different use
'Cause
cases. Treble is really meant for you to be able to edit your audio, whereas Cast Magic, on the other hand, what that is doing is it's grabbing what you've created and it has a ton of pre built prompts to create things like your newsletter, your email, your social media post. You can ask it questions, a thank you letter to your guest. That's all pre built.
what is the difference between doing that with ChatGPT?
It's just
Um,
pre-built. It's for so the primary difference is you don't have to think of those prompts. It's all pre-built. So it's the lazy man's way of getting that content consistently from every single podcast or piece of content that you load into Cast Magic. Does that make sense?
and do you use it, or do you use that, or
I do.
do you use any replacement?
Yeah, I do
Yeah.
use Cast Magic after I have uploaded it to Treble and gotten the final podcast. What I'll do is I'll upload it to Cast Magic. And the beauty of that is it gives me title suggestions, it gives me a summary to put in there, it gives me the show notes. So I'm getting the final piece of content from Treble, and then I'm using Cast Magic instead of having to put the prompts in there into Chat GPT. Cast Magic already knows the prompts that I'm looking for, and it's going to give me that information so I'm not constantly retyping. Give me a show title for this in my particular tone or things like that.
Can I pick up on this, Zakia?
Nice.
I want to pick up on the idea of user generated content. You and I have been pioneering an idea that really the essence of repurposing is getting some of the guests and the listeners that are inspired by the content to take the opportunity to use that content as part of their content creation strategy. And we call this user generated content. This is the coolest hack I think I've ever thought of or ever heard of. And what this basically means is, instead of you repurposing your show, you actually inspire, and that's the right word, you inspire the hosts or the guests or the listeners to create additional content for you for their audience. Now, I've seen you doing this, and I reckon this is the coolest hack I've ever seen. Tell us how you do that and why this is becoming quite a trend.
I think because the sum is always better than each of its individual parts, and we're all going to have different parts that we're going to tap into for a conversation. Like, one thing I'm probably going to do as a result of this is the next time I go live on LinkedIn, I'll probably do a comparison between Treble and Cast Magic because of the conversation that Richard and I had. So you're seeing more and more about, hey, there's additional ways that this content can be seen. Another thing is, I think it's a great way of showing gratitude to the host of the event of, hey, you allowed me to be on your stage. We shared a lot of information. And I just think that there's a lot of people that are, I call it the TikTokification of our society. They want the really short clips in order to drive them to the longer clip. And so repurposing and creating that content gives the longer content that we've done a little bit more shelf life for people to find it and discover it if those clips are compelling enough to bring them back to it.
This actually is. I'm deliberately doing this as a bit of a masterclass. The whole show itself will be just awesome, but we will create clips from this for you. And when I speak, I should fill the frame. But I want to pick up on the idea of a new phrase I didn't invent. It's not my idea, but it's a thing called pod guesting. Now, first of all, I just want to mention that we're going to do a direct comparison between Treble with 2 B's .fm and castmagic.io, which we'll talk about in a bit. But we're talking now about user-generated content. Now, in a world where everyone's got a show and everyone needs guests, you might score an interview one time if you're really clever and really lucky. But I can tell you for sure, it's unlikely you're going to get asked back unless you make a bit of an effort to promote it and do other things, right? So as you said, Zakia, we're talking really about podcasting etiquette now, or pod guesting etiquette. It's a really lovely sort of salute to the host to say, hey, Keith, I enjoyed this show. And guess what? I've written an article about this for you. I know you're busy and you probably don't have time to do it, but I've given you my point of view as a guest because I got a lot out of it too. And please have me back because I enjoyed this. So guess what's going to happen if you had one guest who just comes and talks and goes, and another guest the next week who comes, goes, makes an article, promotes it, talks to their friends. Who are you going to have back? If you had to choose, who are you going to have back? You're going to have the person that does the extra, goes the extra mile. Right? This is possibly the biggest idea around this idea of user-generated content. There's all these different tools. Just pick the one you like. A lot of them are free and have these lifetime deals. In many respects, none are better than the other. What about you, Richard? I know you got to go. Do you have? Oh, he's gone. Okay, he has to go, but he did. But Zakia, this idea of user-generated content being a sort of a nod, a tip of the hat to the host, it's becoming quite important, isn't it?
It is, for sure. And I think we keep hearing how we have to churn out more and more and more content. I'm not really ready to get on that hamster wheel. But if you are participating in a 1 hour, 2 hour stream, there is loads of content that's there. And with AI tools, there's no reason that you can't have at least 15 pieces of content. And they can be 15-second to 90-second clips, blog articles, newsletters, emails, social media captions, all the things that we scratch our head with, like, oh, I know I got to do it, but here's the actual content from it. So now it actually cuts down my workload because I have 2 blogs that I put out every week. But if I come on these shows once a week, I have the rest of the content that I'm going to share on LinkedIn for that week.
Let's pick up. I'm going to play a little sound. This is so important. Okay, now to make sure that it's maximized, I'm going to highlight myself. So we're talking about user-generated content. Now, the real power, this is like you probably haven't thought of this, but the real power of user-generated content is that you are looking for content to write. And imagine going on someone else's show and bouncing off that inspiration. It's your inspiration, it's your words, it's your ideas, but you've bounced off it as a co-creator. I think this could even be a new type of content, couldn't it?
It should be, for sure. I know some people nobody's doing it the way you're doing it, though. But yes, that is the way for, I think, just increasing the shelf life of the content and spreading that message further.
I know you've got to go, and you've done me a big favor. We had a few technical problems, and the original slotted guest didn't arrive, and I still actually don't understand what happened there. But we briefly alluded to uploading your podcast. What tech are you using for that?
So that one I'm using Hubhopper. That's the one I love for uploading my podcast. And that's because they have dynamic ad insertion. So when I have sponsors for the podcast, I can set the exact amount of time that ad should be running. And typically I'll do a 1 month run for those ads. So it allows me to dynamically insert those ads at the beginning, the middle, or at a specific moment in the podcast, and it'll go into all of my episodes for that time period. So that's what I use, and it distributes it to all of my selected platforms.
Oh, brilliant. It's brilliant. Hubhopper.com. And I'm guessing they've probably got a monthly fee and a free version. Let me just check. Yeah, there is a free version and the $12 a month for the whole shebang. Now,
Yeah.
one last thought, and we can finish on this one. How do you promote your podcast? What do you do to promote the podcast being on as a live event, and how do you promote it afterwards?
So I don't do live podcasts, so it's always after it's been loaded. And so with that, I'll just do short clips or audiograms and share those out on LinkedIn, typically Facebook, and then I also send out a newsletter to my subscribers that a new episode has dropped.
Yeah, let's pick up on this. The idea of a newsletter. Is that still working? Is the idea of a written email once a week or once a day still working to generate interest? Are you having any luck with that?
I would say not as much as I had in the past, but there are those diehard fans, and I can see the open rates and the click-through rates that whatever I send, they're always going to click through, open it, read it, respond. I have an Ask Zakia page on my website, which makes it a two-way conversation. So whenever there is a podcast episode or a blog or a live stream, they're able to submit a question or give me feedback. And that gives them, again, user generated content. They weren't on the live episode, but because they've submitted that question, they then show up in a later episode where I'm answering their question. So yeah.
I love that. I love that. Actually, having a part two where people ask things. So this was a little bit of an ad hoc version of events, and it's probably only just going to go an hour, maybe less. But we've covered a lot of ground. The show was called because we're ending it now, Podcasting for Beginners. We talked about how to record your podcast, how to edit your podcast, how to upload your podcast, and how to promote your podcast. So please have a look at those replays and the shorts that will come from it. How can people find you, Zakia, and what's the best way to get a hold of you?
So 2 places. If you are on LinkedIn, of course, look me up by my name, Zakia Ringgold, or you can find me on the web by going to businesstechlab.com. I blog a lot about tech tools and then all of the services that we offer for small businesses.
Brilliant, brilliant. So we're going to wrap it up. I'm noticing the shows are becoming smaller and smaller because a lot of people are having trouble finding the shows. I'm still researching why this is happening. But we do have 3 shows a week, so please come to those. Where is Keith today? I do lots and lots of shows, and there's actually now shows on LinkedIn and YouTube for those. So I'm going to go and get on with my day, and I really want to thank Zakia for coming on. I'll play a little bit of music, and I'll just run through some of the slides we talked about. And we do have another show tomorrow, as normal. That one will be talking about immersive events, this trend now towards online events to save us time in traveling, and it's just much more efficient. So I'm going to go and do my thing, and we'll see you on the flip side.
See you later.